Gary, I'd say it's been just long enough to feel less depressed after that beatdown we took by Michigan. Illinois this week. ESPN has us predicted to lose. Illinois is like 60-something% to 30. Tell me we're going to get a win this week versus Brett Bielema.
I think it's a very winnable game. When we watch the highlights and some of the games that I went back and checked out, the little bit of full games I could find with them, I think the matchup favors us because they seem to get hit. Not bad, but there's gouge plays. You know, each game they have multiple 15, 20-yard runs that'll break loose. The pass defense seems to be a little bit better. Just like they did okay against Kansas. Kansas, obviously, in my opinion, a lot better than them. But I don't think we're going to go out there trying to sling the ball around. I think Rule sounded in his press conferences and whatnot, like obviously real disappointed for the showing of the whole team overall. But he made it a point to say, we're a defensive team. Like we have to, and we talked about, I don't remember his live stream, one of the other videos I brought it up, but it's like a lot of people compare the offense to the defense and say, well, the defense is doing this and that. The offense needs to step up. That's 100% right. But when the defense isn't going to come out and swarm the ball, they're going to start missing tackles. Guys are going to miss assignments. Guys are going to let double teams swallow them up, things like that. It doesn't matter. Your offense is so bad or so vanilla, it could produce double what it normally does and you're still going to lose. So they really need to use this game to get back to what they were doing, even in the first two games of the season they lost, where they still kind of had that identity. They were still a defensive team that was trying to control the clock, time of possession, and pound the ball on the ground. And I think that's doable with this defense. Like I said, there's run plays to be had for sure, especially with the quarterback run. I just hope they can get back to it, man. I hope the defense comes out rejuvenated, a little more fired up. I feel like, it's just my opinion, I felt from the beginning of that game, Nebraska came out expecting to lose and played and had the energy level or the effort level to match that. You know what I mean? Like, I just didn't feel like it was a ton of fight. I felt like there were a lot of little mistakes that all added up, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. And I don't think if something bad happens, or say Illinois gets the ball first, there's a broken play, they score, we have a turnover or something, I don't think we're out of it. I don't think the team will feel out of it like they did with Michigan. But I also don't see why it would get to that point. I think Nebraska, if they keep leaning on the run, can, again, broken record, I say this before every game, but if they can really lean on the run heavy, I think there'll be a lot of opportunity there later in the game. And it's, like I said, I think it's a real winnable game. Illinois isn't the same without Browns and, you know, some of the guys that they've had in the past or whatnot. But I don't know. What do you think, man? You expecting a loss?
Man, I just think you're so accurate when you say that it seems like we came out expecting to lose. But you don't expect that. From everything you saw in training camp, the way Matt Rule seemed like he had these guys in like military style focus. It's really crazy to me that they seemed scared, but they did. So now I'm worried that this team has potentially split personality, or their strong side of their personality has been broken. Hopefully not. Because if that team comes out, once again, without Reimer, they're not going to have Singleton. They're supposed to have Cam Lenhart back, like you were telling me. But if they have the same attitude last week, they can lose this game. They're going to have to come out and be that same team that stood up strong against Minnesota and stood strong for 2.5 quarters versus Colorado. If they can do that, we're winning this game. And I never like to go against Brett Bielema in terms of the Huskers beating him, because he just always beats us. And I'm putting my perfect record on the line this week. I've called some easier than others, but I've called a win or a loss correctly in every game. I think this game is going to be a first step win for Matt Rule. Going and beating a Big Ten school, not the toughest, but a Big Ten school that's been giving the Huskers problems over the last few years. I think he's going to do it because it seems like the players are going to be jacked up emotionally after taking such a beating. I'm thinking and hoping they're going to really play to put respect back on their names. And so I expect them to beat this team that they should beat. Like, they're not that impressive. We've faced much worse.
I thought last week was kind of a benchmark game. Some people believe it and buy into it, and some people don't. But I'm one that I think if you can protect the ball against Minnesota, for sure a win. If you protect the ball against Colorado, very good chance of winning, right? And then you come home to lesser opponents and you do what you're supposed to do. Still mistakes, not a, finished product by any stretch. But then you kind of have that, okay, with the new quarterback and the new kind of flow of the offense with him, are they still that same team that they were against the first two Power 5 teams, just with a different quarterback? Or are they still that same team. They just played lesser competition, right? And then if you're better than you were when you started the game, go see how close you are to the next step by playing Michigan. Not good, right? Like, not good at all. So now it's like, okay, you're nowhere near that caliber of a team. And I know people differ from my opinion, but I don't expect them to be right now. That's down the road where I think they need to be, or, obviously need to be. But so now you're going a few levels, but I'm saying tier wise, you're dropping down and you're going to play a Power 5 Big Ten school that, to your point, their coach has been your daddy ever since he was at Wisconsin. They've beaten us the last however many times we've played them. And now you're going to see, okay, you're better than the, FCS schools, the two that you played. And maybe you're better than the team you were when you gave the game away to Minnesota and practically gave it away to Colorado. Are you good enough to compete on levels you weren't good enough to compete at over the last couple of years? Like, this is the next, a smaller test, but it's still a test to kind of see where you're at. And, Illinois is off to a rough start. So this is going to be a big game for them too. They're going back home. They just got thumped by Purdue last week. So, I mean, they're going to be trying to get all their stuff right and fix their mistakes and get back on track and still try to do what they can do with what's left of the season, at least as far as the West is concerned. But I kind of expect a bit of a sloppy game. Like, you're 100% right with Reimer and Singleton being gone. I don't know if that's why the defense looked so bad, or if it seemed pretty collective. So I don't know that it was like, oh yeah, they're struggling here, they're struggling there, because, our defense is pretty deep overall, but the DBs and the linebackers especially. So I don't take that for as much of as an excuse. I haven't heard anybody say this, but there's no way you're winning that game if those two players are there. That's still not enough help for you. But let's pretend it's true just for argument's sake. What does that say about where your overall team is at in your depth? If two guys are gone out of the 22 starters you have, and you get embarrassed, not just beat, you got embarrassed by a team that came into your house and did whatever they wanted to do to you and could have done way more. If they wouldn't have pulled guys when they pulled guys, they could have dropped 70 plus on us, right? So there's a lot of, like you said, saving face that needs to happen for Nebraska. And there's a lot they need to learn about themselves. I think Rule said it perfect in his press conference after the Michigan game when they asked him about temperature of the team, something along those lines. And he's like, ask me Friday night after the game. And I agree. Like, you got a mud hole stomped in your ass. How do you react? You have more than enough errors and mistakes on tape to work on throughout the week and try to fix. How do you react to that? There's just a lot of quiz, whatever you want to call it, in front of them, and I'm super curious to see how they pass or fail on them. You know what I mean? But from what I've seen from Illinois, I don't even see the Illinois team of the last 2 years. And I mean, that makes sense because they lost some guys, but even more so, I don't have a clue where Nebraska's at. I couldn't tell you where, if you were to rank the top 100 teams, where Nebraska would be. I don't have a gauge, and I'd like to get that from one of these games, but I just feel like, shitting down your leg against two Power 5 teams and then kind of doing what you're supposed to do against non-Power 5 teams and then getting that result off of Michigan. It's like, I don't know what this team is, man. I'm just, in a perfect world with what they have, Leonard being back is going to be huge because he's special off the edge. I think he was greatly missed last week, but we saw Illinois has given up their starter, at least, has taken like 18 sacks already on the year. So, I mean, they're going to be there. There's going to be opportunities to get to the quarterback there. The run game for our offense, there's going to be spots where they can pull that apart and do that. Curious to see if Fleeks gets more carries. If things go smooth, though, man, and by smooth, I mean not turnovers, not a bunch of missed tackles, not 3-and-outs and dumb penalties, things like that. If things go fairly smooth, I think Nebraska could not just win, and I don't mean this in like a disrespect towards Illinois or like, oh, dude, they're going to drop. But I mean, I think it could be close, and they could just continue to keep pulling away as the game goes. Now, if they're going to have a bunch of turnovers and they're going to miss tackles and guys are going to spring off 30 and 40-yard runs here and there because of missed assignments, obviously that changes things. And that's where I go back to, I don't know what we're getting out of this team, on either side of the ball, really. You thought the defense was pretty solidified and shored up, and then you watched that game last week and it's like, no, they got a lot of work to do or a lot of refocusing to do either way. What do you got? What are you thinking for outcome?
You mentioned their quarterback, Luke Altmaier. He's not bad, 6'2", 200 pounds. He's a sophomore. He's throwing it 215 yards a game. So, like, comparatively to us, that's really good. But
Well, that's good, but they don't run for as many yards as we do.
and it seems like their offensive line isn't the greatest. Their running back, Reggie Love the third, he's only been the leading rusher for them 2 times out of 5 games. I'm not super scared of him. Their wide receiver, their best wide receiver, he's only 5'10", Isaiah Williams. I think we need to bottle him up and maybe have an extra, a safety, looking at bracketing him. He's got 30 receptions already, and he's almost up at 500 yards for the season. Comparatively for us, the closest thing we have to that's Billy Kemp, and he's only got 17 receptions, so they're really going to him. But yeah, defensively, man, they've only forced 3 interceptions. They've only recovered 2 or 3 fumbles. So it's like this game, I just think, is tailor-made for the Huskers to get back on the right track and start treading in the right direction. And I just think they're going to. Score-wise, I'm willing to go like 28-17. What do you got for a score?
Originally, I was thinking 31-17. I'm curious to see if they stick with Albano, which it sounds like he will, and how he does situation-wise. When I was sitting there trying to figure out what I thought the score would be, I was thinking 4-ish touchdowns and a couple field goals. And then I'm like, well, track record shows if we attempt a few field goals, a few are going to get missed, right? So I'll go 31-10 since you already said 17. 31-10 Nebraska. And I think it'll be a close-ish looking start. And then I don't think it's going to be like a drubbing or a blowout or whatever. I think Nebraska will just, with that run game especially, kind of steadily stay at it. And I agree with you. The way their offense is set up, if they can kind of contain some of those receivers from getting loose, I don't think they're going to run all over us. I think you're going to see where we were previously ranked the number 1 rush defense. I think you'll see more of that style of game, even without Reimer and Singleton. I think guys are going to look at this as a real bounce back opportunity, so to speak.
Tell us what you guys think in the comments. Do you have a score prediction? See you Friday night for the live stream. Cannot wait. Until then, go Big Red.